Hello and welcome to my first Passion, Purpose and Grit of 2024. Today's guest is a special man from football, a pioneer and one of the most recognisable names of his generation. Luther Blissett is Watford through and through. He played over 500 games for the club, scored 186 goals for them and was instrumental in their rise from the 4th division to the top flight, on the way becoming the first black player to score in an England shirt. This was a showbiz club, and his teammates included John Barnes, while the future manager was future England boss Graham Taylor. While happy to share a photo with the two of them was a man you might recognise, Chairman Elton John. Luther also played for Milan and Bournemouth, but the love affair with Watford never died. Freedom of the borough, Deputy Lieutenant of the county, there's little cause to challenge that accolade of Watford's greatest ever. So it's a great pleasure to welcome Luther to the show today. And thank you so much for joining us, Luther. Can we start at the beginning? We'll talk about all those lovely things as well. But I read in Wikipedia, you can tell me if Wikipedia is wrong because it's wrong for my entry, but it says you were born in Jamaica. How did
That's
you
right.
get to Watford? How did the Watford thing start?
Goodness me. First of all, thank you very much for having me on today. Well, it started, I would have been, what, 6, I think it was. We arrived in England in 64, I think we did.
Right.
And that was my eldest sister, my eldest brother, myself. My parents had left about 18 months previous to come to England to make a home and jobs and that sort of thing. And then, we were the first family to come over. And that's where the adventure, let's say, started when we landed in England, because we arrived, I think it was about October time. And I mean, back then, we were talking so long ago, and people think it's cold now in October. Trust me. Back then, winter used to start pretty much when you got back to school in August, and you'd have snow and all sorts of things. So coming from the Caribbean, where it was, well, always hot, running around bare feet most of the time. You're like 400 yards or more from the beach. You could run down to the beach and into the sea. It was a very, very different experience to suddenly come to cold England, where it was snowing and just cold and damp. Never knew what that was like. So for me, that was the introductory to England. But actually, the Watford story didn't start until probably that would have been almost 10 years later before that actually started. So we can either go straight into that, or we can just
tell me about the journey over, because as you said, you were very young. The parents had already left Jamaica, so they were already in England. So it must have been quite a scary experience to make that journey.
I think it would have been more scary had it not I'd not come over with my two elder siblings, because Dina, who's my eldest sister, she at the time she would have been 9, 10 at the time. So she was old. She was old then. When you're a kid, 10 is old. So she was old by then, and my brother sort of in the middle of it all. So we came over together, and the fact that we were still that family unit together, it was more of an adventure than anything else, because we landed, first of all, we left Jamaica and we landed in Canada. And I remember landing in Canada, it was very strange, because talk about snow, that was proper snow. And we walked into the terminal building because we were being sort of escorted by somebody on BOAC. Now, there's something you haven't heard in a while, is it?
No, that's right.
And we walked to the terminal building, and there was this enormous polar bear in the middle of the terminal building. And I mean, to a 6-year-old, it was absolutely ginormous, this thing. And so that was that was a scary thing when when I saw that thing. But so we arrived in England and met by parents, and was brought to Harlesden, which is where we first started live, in Dole Gardens it was. And little did I know at the time, across the road, King Edward's Park, and right next door, they were actually building the secondary school that I would be going to when I turned 11, 12. No idea at the time. So, funny how things are. So I was literally 100 yards from the school that I would end up as, in my later years going to.
You'd gone to school in Jamaica before you came to England, or was that your
Yes, yeah. Well, I mean, I started school in Jamaica when I was about 4 and a half, 5.
Yeah,
is when I went there. And I vaguely remember, I think the Queen arriving in Jamaica at some stage, maybe when I was about 4 or maybe 5.
Yeah.
I remember that because I remember the helicopter landing, and we were all sort of at Montego Bay. We were all sort of running around, and then I think so. I remember vaguely. I don't think that's an imagination one, but I vaguely remember that. But it didn't really mean a lot to you because television never really had a television, so didn't really know what was going on. You get told things as a kid at that age, but it doesn't really register because it's just this, the very posh white lady arrived, with a load of people dressed in uniform and that. So that's all it was to us.
So what about school in England? What are your early memories of school? English
Yeah, I went to the school I went to first, obviously junior school.
Yeah.
Just about. Was I still in infants? And yeah, might have just got out of infants. I was just going to junior school. And it was just down the road it literally was walk over the top of the hill, over Ruttersley Road, down the other end, and that's where the school was. So it was no more than a quarter mile of a walk. And that was obviously very different because apart from seeing the odd white person where I was, where we live, because we live in Falmouth, you never really saw anybody. And suddenly I was at school and pretty much everyone there was white and predominantly Irish, actually, which is something that I got to understand a little bit later on. And there was a huge sort of Irish population there in Ulster at the time. So that was getting used to that, and just the way things were different. You had to put a coat on when in the winter and had shoes on and that, and lessons were very different to what I can recall, because back then you were just sort of learning how to write and read and that sort of thing. So that continued at pace once I got to school, and that experience was very different. That interaction with the white kids there, which most of them were, that was sometimes very, very different. They call you all these names and one thing another way, and you couldn't really understand why or what they meant. So in a way, being a bit naive and ignorant of what the meanings of all that were for a while was actually quite good, and especially in the first couple of years when I first got to England.
Did you make friends at school? I mean, when you're a kid, you make friends fairly quickly because you join in. If you join in the games and things that other people do, then there's always going to be 1 or 2 people that you get on very well with, and that's what it was like. Yes, you're always going to get the school bully or people who behave that way, but that you had that back in Jamaica, so that wasn't a major difference to that. So you just sort of got on with life, and you kicked around playing football in the playground, and that's where you sort of introduced to play football, because going back to in Jamaica, there was didn't know what football was, no idea what football was. Yet we played cricket, and we do that on the beach, do that in the plane, do it in the park, or whatever. And that's what we do. Any bit of spare ground, that's what you play cricket. So coming to England, and obviously that time of year, no cricket. It's just everybody's playing football and that, and you sort of join in. And it was a game that at the time I had no idea that's what that would ultimately be what made my career. Did you take to it naturally? Were you naturally gifted? Are you a natural ball player, or how?
I don't know about naturally. I think I was willing to just run around, which is what you did at that age. As kids, you just run around after the ball is what you did. The structure, there was no structure. The ball was you throw the ball in, and you all run around kicking it, and we just get stuck in playing a bit of football that way. The structure started to come once they picked the first school team, which I think I would have been about 7 then, by about 7 or coming on 8 when I first was picked in the school team. And that came around because boys are all there, we're going to pick the school team to play our first game in whenever it was, I can't remember. And right, they started, what position do people want to play, and immediately go, I want to be a goalkeeper, I want to be the striker, I want to do that. So I went through all the positions, and there was one position left, and there was like three of us boys left, and it was like, so we got left back. Who wants to play left back? And you could literally see the others going, I don't play left back, and turning away from. Anna just went, not knowing what left back was. I said, I'll play left back. And so that was the position I first started at school, playing at left back, which was quite something. And so at about 7 or 8, I started there. And by the time I got to about 10, I was moved to centre half because the teacher realised I was very quick. So he thought, play you at centre half so you can help us hopefully not concede too many goals if we're not the best defending team. So yeah, I played at centre half from the age of about 10 until I was 14.
Yeah.
About 14, almost 15 before I moved and played and before I went up front. And that only came around. By this time I'd gone to Wilson High at the age of 12. And I was still playing centre half there. And then at 14, we were playing somewhere over in Orange Hill or somewhere in Edgware, Finchley, somewhere around there or other. And we were a goal down, and it was like, it's the usual thing. You hear it all the time. There's 20 minutes of this game to go on this Saturday morning where, playing a school match away from home. And the teacher thought we could do some pace in the team. So he goes, Luther, go and play up front. I know you can play left back, so I'm going to put you on the left wing. So put me left wing. Yeah. I went out on left wing, made one, scored 2. And at the end of the game, he said to me, right, that's where you play now. And so I didn't even start playing up front. I went there and went again out on the left-hand side. Yeah. So I started at left wing and I played there then right up until I went to trials at Watford and got through. And it was a strange one. It wasn't until I actually started playing at Watford on the 17th while I was still at school.
Yeah.
That I ended up going and playing actually up the middle. Up until then, I played out on the left, and that was the first time I played there. Because even at school, I played wide until the last sort of year and a half, almost 2 years before I ended up playing up front, and just loved scoring goals. Goodness me, I thought stopping them and all that at the back was fun, but scoring goals was far better.
Yeah. So how and when did the idea that you might make it as a professional footballer take root?
I don't know about making it. I remember we played somewhere. I can't remember where it was. Somewhere near Shepherd's Bush. We played a school somewhere that side somewhere, and I think Manchester United were playing QPR. I think that day, and because we finished around about 1 o'clock or whatever our game. So we thought the game was on. So as you do as kids, you hang around, don't you? And because then they didn't have the high fences and locked closed in stadiums as they were, I remember we thought we'd just watch a bit of the game before we had to get back home. And I think there was 3 or 4 of us, and we stood there at one of them and watched the game go. And I saw the most incredible footballer I'd ever seen, apart from seeing the bits in the World Cup with Pele, was George Best. Yeah. And seeing that, and we only watched it for probably about 10, 15 minutes before we had to get going. And just seeing that, I thought, that's what I'd like to do. I'd love to do what he's doing, be him. And in that short space of time, that's what made me a Manchester United supporter. Just that. Nothing about their history, knew nothing about the Munich air crash or anything, knew nothing at all. So
George
Best. That was it. Yeah. So that's where it started.
Yeah. And when you communicated to your parents that you wanted to be a professional footballer, how did that go?
Well, I didn't even do that. I just thought, I'd love to do that. As a kid, I'd love to be a footballer, but you got on and did your schoolwork and whatever. Yeah. And I would have been 16, and we're just turning 16. Yes. So I'm just going up to be able to go in the common room, and it was beginning of the season, so it would have been August into September. And Paul Kitson, who had been at Wilson High. And he had left like 3 years prior to that. Because I remember watching the first 11 when, whenever we used to play and we used to travel the same anywhere but they went, first 11, whenever our game finished, and we always finished before they did, and they had the last 15, 20 minutes or whatever ago, we'd all go and watch them because they were like the boys. They had everything in their team. Really amazing group of players. And Paul Kitson had been at Watford for about a year, his second year or whatever. And he came to Watford at the beginning. He came to the school, or rather, at the beginning of that year. Yeah. And he must have been talking to the headmaster, but then he came in the common room, and we all heard that he was back in the common room. So we all sort of piled into the common room and was hanging on every word that he said. And in the conversation, he told us that Watford were due to start having open trials at RAF Stanmore in the next couple of weeks. So he told us all about it. And as usual, you know, all of us from that team, it was in the 5th year at the time, we went, oh, we've got to go with that, haven't we?
Yeah.
And I think nine of us from that team went and joined in at trials on the first Thursday. We went to RAF Stanmore. And I remember the training session, you know, there was running and they were doing stretches and exercises and burpees and stuff like that. And we're looking at each other saying, this ain't football. What are we doing?
Yeah.
You know, we just come to play football. Because you know that, because again, you didn't see it on TV. You had no idea there was all this had to go on before you could do that. And so that was a bit of an eye opener when we did that, and didn't like that bit of it at all. But once the ball came out, that's when we came into our own.
Yeah.
So did about 2 or 3 of those. Then they were organised. Then we had a game, which a few of us were invited to. Myself and 3 other players of us were invited back to play in this trial game. And the trial game was against Southend. So it was against Southend's under-17s team. So yes, I must have just been on the verge of getting to be 16 myself. And so yeah, we played in that game, and it was played at Headstone Lane. So it was an easy one for me. Just jump on the training wheels and jump up Headstone Lane. It literally was a walk of sort of 400 yards, and you know, you're at where the game was being played. So it was great. Played the game, scored another couple of goals in that, and it was the first time they'd beaten Southend in a long while at that level, under 17. So you know, that's for me where it all started. And you know, by the time I got to 16 and the year when I was about ready to leave school, they offered me a contract at Watford.
Right.
So that was something, and that's where it started. So I remember going home and saying to Mum, Watford have offered me a contract to be a professional footballer. And I remember when my dad, you know, he was like, why? What are you doing messing around playing stupid ball game? He said, go and get yourself a proper job. And those words will never leave me, you know, get yourself a proper job. Because it never crossed your mind that you actually had to get paid if you're doing something. You know, I just wanted to be a professional footballer. Never knew what it was all about. But my uncle and my mum, it was amazing. My mother was, she would make sure I had boots, anything that I needed, and be able to, you know, have that, your bus fare, your train fare to get to games for the school, or whether it be for when I had to go and play for Watford and as a kid. So she just said to me, you know, if that's what you want to do, then that's what you should pursue. And you know, a few of my uncles who obviously were a bit wiser on football, and they said to me, no, do your football. If that's what they're saying and they're offering you that, you should take it.
Yeah.
And I remember at the time I was lined up for a mechanics apprenticeship in Stonebridge, which is just up the road from me.
Yeah.
And then, you know, and you know, and when they made me the offer, I told my year teacher who looked after the team, and he said, when you get the contract, can I have a look at it? I remember those words. So I remember when they gave me it towards the latter part of the season.
Yeah.
And they said, and I brought it in, and I said, yeah, this is it. And he read through it and whatever, and he explained some of it to me and whatever.
Yeah.
And yeah, so he said, no, it's amazing. He said, you should sign it, because this is just an amazing thing to be offered this, you know, so early on in your life.
Yeah,
so.
I should imagine though the wages weren't particularly high for apprentices. They never
Well,
were.
the thing is, I wasn't an apprentice. I never was an apprentice, because because I signed. I was 16 when they offered it to me.
Yeah.
So by the end of the season, because my birthday's 1st of February, I was then 17 by then. So, and they knew that, so they offered me a professional contract for 2 years straight away. But because they didn't really have many apprentices, I had to do all of the work with the other young pro that had been there as well. So we did all the work, bringing the kits, the boots and dressing rooms and all that kind of stuff. We did all of that, and it was like 2-3 of us, and we did all of that, and then still had to do your training and everything in between.
And Watford at this time was were you in the 4th division?
When I first signed, they were in the 3rd division, I think, and then end of my first season, they were relegated to the 4th division, and that's when Graham Taylor arrived, which would have been 77. So that's when Graham arrived, and you know, little did I know, this man would completely change my world and the world of Watford Football Club.
Yeah, what were your first impressions of Graham? I mean, he came to you as a very young manager, didn't he?
He did. I remember, because things you find out, well, no, I knew at the time. Everyone who was a pro, he wanted to speak personally to every player. So you had a time slot. You had to be at the ground at whatever time on the after he done, and it's one of his first few days there. And what he did, he would talk to every one of the players individually. So we all went down to his office and sat there, and he'd have a conversation with him. I got there, and because there'd been rumours that that Watford might let me go after the first year, because I played youth team and reserve team that first year, and had one or two spells on the bench for Watford, and also made my debut at Easter, right, where I scored against Swansea here at Vicarage Road. So that was, sorry, that's me switching the engine of the car because I thought I forgot the engine still running. So that was so yeah. So I say to go back.
You felt you were gonna you might not make.
So that's right, because the talk where then maybe they might let you go.
Yeah.
But little did I know that Tom Wally, who was a player at the time, and sort of came to the end of his playing career himself, had actually already spoken to Graham Taylor from when he arrived, and said, they're thinking, the previous management were thinking they might release him and let him go, but I think you should really give him a chance, because he's got something, and he might be a special player for us. Really? And because he had told me, Tom had told me, so if they let you go, my brother's at Crystal Palace, and I'd go straight to Crystal Palace.
Right.
If that was the case. But Graham listened, obviously, and I remember when I walked into the room, and he sat down, and he really didn't look up much, because he obviously had some notes on his desk, and he just sat there, and he said my name while he was still looking at the paper, and he went, Luther Blissett, Luther Blissett, and he said again, Luther Blissett, and then he looked up at me straight in the eyes, and he said, with a name like that, son, said, you've got to be a star, haven't you? and that was when I knew then I was going to be given the chance to show what I was able to do. Brilliant. Which was amazing. And he spoke to me more about what he wanted to be doing and what you'd expect from all of us. And that it literally was, if you're good enough, you're old enough, and if you're good enough, regardless of what age you are, you can get in the team and can play for me. But the standards were very high, and you knew exactly what you had to deliver if you're going to stay there. Was
the nucleus of the team that rose through the divisions there, or did they gradually arrive? Or
it gradually arrived, because what Graham first and foremost did, because I think when he first arrived, the club had a lot of old experienced pros here, and he felt they were running the way things were. And I looked at it, and later on, and I realised what he was saying. And it was a case of, you can't have the lunatics running the asylum, can you? You just can't do that.
Yeah.
So his thing was, this is how we're going to do this to sort it out. You either come on board with me, or there's the door. And that was as strong as it was, and which was great for us young players, because we thought, there's a door opening here for us, and if we could, if we can fill that void, and we can be the ones that step up and did that. And pretty much myself, Pete Coffield, Kevin McCarthy, and then we're the younger ones, we got in the team, and Keith Mercer, and we sort of stayed there, especially in that, we stayed in and around the first team from then, and sort of, though the others sort of were left behind a little bit as I continued and made my way into my career with the club. But that was what Graham did, and he brought in, and his first signings was Sam Ellis, captain at Lincoln. So he brought him in. He brought in Dennis Booth, midfield player, also from Lincoln that way. Ian Bolton, he was the third one he brought in. And those were the first three signings that he brought in. So he brought in a captain and a centre half. He brought Ian Bolton in, who can play midfield or at the back. and he brought in Dennis Booth, who was also a midfield player. You know, good,
Mm.
good. You know, Booth was great because he could see things, and he's the one that could play little passes and you know, taught me a lot of little things about your timing of your runs and stuff like that on top of what Graham was teaching us. So they were the first players, and they added to what we already had. You know, started that ball rolling, for want of a better way of putting it. And you know, we obviously won promotion, great number of points, great goal scoring for that first season, and the rest they say is history.
Well, yeah. Was there ever a sense when you thought the momentum has started? We are now almost unstoppable, or did
I
you see
think
the fits and
I,
starts then?
I think that momentum at the age I was, I probably didn't really recognize that, being a 17, just coming on 18-year-old now in that first year, at the end of that first year with Graham Taylor. I was probably didn't really get a feel of that momentum because I was sort of substitute a lot, you know, and used here and there. And so probably didn't really feel that you were right in the midst of it.
Yeah.
It wasn't until the following season when we started in the League Cup, and I'd had a sub appearance, whatever. Then we played Newcastle at home, and I was on the bench, and I think we're goal down, and he brings me on, and within half an hour, turns the game around. I've scored twice, and we beat Newcastle 2-1. You know, and then you know you're sort of hovering in around the game, hovering around on that verge of getting in the first team. He had brought in also the likes of Bertie Mee as well, sort of that advisor and that old head experienced manager to help with everything you're doing. Because as Greg, you said yourself, he's a very young man, and I used to have regular conversations with Bertie Mee,
right?
You know, because Bertie Mee would say, you know, you've got to start believing more in yourself, and you have to start getting a consistent level of performance if you're going to make a place in the team, because we know you can do this and that, but are you going to be an impact sub, or are you going to be someone that is there? And, you know, these were the conversations I had with him. Tom Wally was the same from time to time, would pull me and do the same, and Graham Taylor would, but he left it more to his staff around him to do that, because you know that's why he had that staff of people that could do that. And I just, you know, you slowly started to understand what was required to make it in the team over a period of time. And then obviously we went to Manchester United, and again scored 2 goals there. We beat them. Went to Stoke, we drew at Stoke, got them back to Vicarage Road. I scored 2 in that, beat them. You know, and that's where it just kept rolling. And you know, then Nottingham Forest in the semi-final over 2 legs, scored equaliser there, made it 1-1. And then this again just shows you why you can never relax in a football match. So I make it 1-1. So it's half time then, going over, and I hit the post at the other end. I remember I just cut inside, I hit my right foot from just inside the box, and it's hit the near post with the side that I was on, and it's hit the post, and it hit the post that hard and that true. The ball pinged past me where I was on the edge of the box, out of the box, and they broke from that and scored. Scored the second goal, which ultimately would be the final score after the second leg. And it was just shows the margins.
Yeah.
How close that was for me. And you know, you're thinking, you almost think I've made that goal for them by giving that ball where it did from a shot that you hit the post with, you know. So I remember.
Was that Watford team doing anything different to the rest of the competition? Were you training harder or spending more time on tactics? Or
Graham Taylor's first thing he said to everybody, he said, if you're gonna, he said football is a forward passing, forward running game. So he told us. So if you're going to play this game and you're going to play it the way that I want you to, and for you to outlast the opposition, we're going to work really hard. So we did. We worked seriously hard. And I say it sometimes, people go, how can that be? Training was so much tougher than many of the games that we played.
Really?
Training was, because I mean, the game's hour and a half. We would train like that for 2 hours and then back out in the afternoon doing some more. And that's what it was like. So it was a case of, as games went on, and we mustn't forget then, the pitches were different, boots were different, so the grounds were heavier, and you needed to have that, be able to drive through all of that later on in the games. And so we would put the opposition under immense pressure in that last 20 minutes, because we would just maintain that level of performance right the way through to the very end until the final whistle. And you hear that people talk about Fergie time, because with him it was all a case of you keep going until Manchester United never give up. They give up when the final whistle, and even then, they're still going. And that was the same mentality that we had. And I think there were great similarities between Ferguson and Graham Taylor in the way his teams mentally and physically were prepared for games.
And when did Elton John come on board, and what was his influence? Was it just a showbiz thing, or did he have?
No, Elton John came on board while I was still at school, and I was coming in training at the ground on a Monday evening, and then at Stanmore on a Thursday evening. So I remember we were here on a Monday night at the ground when we were doing agile running and bits of training or whatever, and then we'd kick lumps out of each other in the car park, which health and safety these days wouldn't even allow you to park your car in one, much less to be for young boys of the age of 15 and 16 to be running around playing football. So I remember when we were training, and I remember this chap with big lapels and big glasses and a hat or appeared in the tunnel with Jim Bonzer, I think at the time was still chairman, I think at the time. And they were stood there with Ron Rollitt, and they were stood in the tunnel. I had no idea who he was. No idea who he was, and because coming from where I am, it was sort of reggae and soul music and that kind of stuff, and ska clips and all that kind of stuff that we listened to. Stuff on the radio you heard, but you really didn't listen a lot. So didn't know who he was, this chap with the the high heel boots and all that sort of thing. And so that was when he was looking to get involved from then. And then obviously by the time Graham arrived, which would have been 18 months, 2 years later, he was then chairman. And he was very much almost that silent partner behind it, because he gave Graham Taylor freedom to run it the way it was, because Graham wouldn't have done it any other way. He had to do it the way he wanted to, and everything had to be that way. And so Elton John had to be the chairman, which was the head of everything, but the only person that really liaised with him, and it was Graham. They're the one then, as a pair, would talk and plan and whatever, and we as the players would get on and do the work we're there to do.
Did you benefit from the sort of the showbiz element?
I think
that it helped.
I think it definitely helps, because when you've got a team 4th division club that is now just one promotion and now in 3rd division, at the end of the day, Watford is usually it's a stop on the train going north. So nobody really knows anything about Watford at that time. But the fact that you've got somebody who is an international global star already, then people start to take notice of Watford when you won a game. It was a case, Watford's won again. Graham, they'd talk. They wouldn't talk about one without the other. So if they spoke about Elton John, it would be like Elton John, chairman of Watford. And if they talk about Watford, it would be Watford, Graham Taylor, and obviously the chairman Elton John. So it was really synonymous with the way it worked, and publicity wise for the club, and to elevate that to the consciousness of people was just it was great, for all of us.
And did that attract people like John Barnes or?
Well, John Barnes, no, I don't think that had anything to do with John Barnes coming to Watford, because John Barnes would have been a 17-year-old playing at Sudbury Court, which is obviously just only 8 miles away. And he was spotted by a supporter who informed the club. Bertie Mee, I think, saw him, and then the message was to Graham, got to sign this boy. He's something you're talking about, seriously special player. So that's how it came. And there was a conversation with John's parents and Graham Taylor about, because John was due to go back to Jamaica. That school, but because he wanted to play football, and the conversation he had with the Grahams, they'd look after him and all that thing, which is Watford were brilliant at that, what they did with young players. And so he stayed, and again, it was all of our benefit to that. And I mean, to this day, I still haven't seen a better player at 17 that makes his way into the first team and never look back. I've never seen anybody like that. Wayne Rooney, perhaps, but that's they're about the only two.
Do you still keep in contact with John?
Yes, Barnes. Yeah, we still keep in contact. He's part of the former players club, John. So he helps out bits and pieces on the charity side that we do.
Good. And that rise through the divisions, that obviously helped with recognition and presumably pay. It became...
Yes, yeah, because you mentioned about first wages at 17 when I signed. My first wage packet, when I remember picking it up on that first week, at the end of that first week, them days, you used to actually get a brown envelope, proper brown envelope with cash in it. So I had that, and there was £30 in it.
Yeah,
£30, princely sum of £30. But because of me being new and whatever, they also gave you a signing on fee. And now, brace yourself for this, signing on fee, £250. Unbelievable. So you can imagine, there I am. And if you wind the mind back, if you had £5 back in the end of the 70s, just remember what you could do with £5.
True.
Back then. And that was an absolute fortune. So to have £30 and then plus on top of that, £250 in cash on you when you're going, unbelievable. Because I'm going back home now, because I'm on the train going back to Wilton, and I get off the train, walking through Harlesden down around the high road and stuff, and I'm passed in places where where they're selling cars and second-hand cars and stuff like that. And I'm going down thinking, I could buy that. Literally, I can just walk in and go, I'll buy that and drive off with it. Go past shops.
In the test first.
Yeah, that's right. I go by shops, and I could go in and buy my mum a 3-piece suite, and go and buy a new fridge, a new freezer, and you whatever. And you're going home, and suddenly it's like, wow, incredible. So I walk home, all this going in your head on that Friday, I remember, and got home, and I went and say, "Mum, home," sort of thing, and like I always do, first thing, up to my room, sleep for about an hour or so, put my head down and sleep for about an hour or so. So I went up to my room, and I got out all the money. I remember this. I got out, opened the envelopes, and I got the £30 out, because that I always give mum half of that straight away, to give her that. And then I always had the money there, and I opened it up, and I went, oh my God. And I sat on my bed, and I just flung it all up in the air, and then laid on the bed. And it's like your money all fluttering down and that. And I've laid down on the bed, and I've gone straight off to sleep. An hour or half, 2 hours, whatever, when I woke up, there's just money littered everywhere in the room.
Brilliant.
Maddest things. I go and pick it all up and then give mum the money for this, that, and the other, whatever you do. It's a case of going and buy some clothes, because clothes is something you never had much of. You had one pair of half decent trousers, one pair of shoes, and whatever, back then. You had and whatever. So so it was great.
And playing for England, how did that come about?
Well, the England thing obviously started the under-21s. I was picked. It was after the Manchester United game, because having obviously scored in the Manchester United game, whatever, then the England suddenly, you sort of get that interest, and the opportunity came to play in the under-21s. But before that, I was contacted by Mike Smith from Wales. He was the Welsh manager at the time, and he said, we'd like you to come, you to play for Wales, because coming from the Caribbean, I was eligible to play for all of the 4 home nations. And I remember thinking about it seriously for a long time, but I did, but it boiled down, I think, in having been to Wembley and seen an England game when I went with the school. And it was like, no, I don't want to play for anybody else. If I'm going to play for anybody, I've got to have the white shirt and them 3 lines on my. So that's what I've got to play for England if I'm going to do it. And I remember speaking to him and saying, thank you very much, but England is my choice and always has been, the country I want to play for. Had Jamaica had a team that was putting up trees and whatever, then I think my decision would have been even harder.
Yeah.
Because you know what my mum would have said to me and pet and family and whatever.
Sure.
That might have been a slightly different situation, but in this instance, no, England was always going to be the number one choice.
Really. And so you played for the under-21s, but
Yeah.
then the first team. When you got your England call up for the national side, what
Yes,
were your feelings? So what was the game, and how did that happen?
it was West Germany, which shows how long ago it was. It was West Germany at Wembley, and
Right.
it would have been this would have been 1982.
Right.
Yeah, 1982. And it was right the first international of the season, and it was a friendly, and it was, if there's any such thing when you play Germany, and it was against West Germany at Wembley, and had Ray Wilkins played. I remember because Ray Wilkins slid in for a tackle with what's his name, big burly, used to play with his socks down at the
Right.
time.
German.
It will come to me. And split his shin open or whatever.
Right.
You know, his calf muscle. That's right.
Yeah.
And but it was that cleaner cut that he started when they slid in, that it was Hans Peter Briegel.
Right.
It was so clean. There was no blood.
Really?
No blood. It was just the most. Looked at it and I went, wow.
Yeah.
It was just no blood. It just cut the muscle so cleanly.
Good.
Yeah, and I went on for Cyril Regis for the last half hour of that game against him, and that was the reality of that was my debut. But my
Right.
full debut came a month would have been August. That would have been October, wouldn't it? September. Yeah. And I made my full debut in the Euros against Luxembourg.
Right. And Wikipedia tells me you scored a hat-trick.
I did. I got a hat-trick in that one. Scored a hat-trick. For this day, I don't know why I didn't get the first one, because I've cut in on the left-hand side and going to the box, and I've hit it across the goal.
Yeah.
And one of their players had put their foot out to try and block it, and he deflected into the goal. And it was, for me, it was going in. Nobody's going to tell me any different. And yeah, it would have been really nice to have had that one as well. But no, it was something. It was a very special night to score a hat-trick on your debut, and it was just an amazing evening.
What was it like?
You know, I tell you what it was like, because people talk about these things, but I remember when I was told that I'd been picked for England.
Yeah.
Graham Taylor rang me.
Right.
At the weekend after a game, because the international then was the following week. The Germany game was the following week. And he rang me after I got back from the game and said, his words sort of were, he says, "You're not going to believe this." And I went, "What?" And I'm thinking, why is the manager ringing me on a Saturday night when I've just seen him at the game? That's what we just played today. And he said, you've been picked to play for England." Gobsmacked. Didn't, just, because the under 21s is sort of a continuation of you playing up another level of what you do. But this is big boy stuff now. This is the big boy. You're and that was, and you are just blown away by it. And the first time you report on that Sunday, I remember it was the most strangest thing, because you've got likes of Kevin Keegan, you've got Ray Wilkins, you've got Ray Clemens, Peter Shilton, you've got,
gosh,
you think of all those names, and here am I, and look at them, sort of thing. Yeah, it was just a surreal thing, really a surreal thing. I think how
was the welcome? Do they treat you as, do they welcome you into the side, or is it
they just get on with it. They just get on with it, because it's like you go anywhere and there's a group established already.
Yeah. And
they just get on with stuff, and you come in and they just sort of almost wait to see what you're going to bring.
And do, yeah.
Which is what it was. And yeah. So the first training session was, because having been at Watford as well, our training sessions were like playing in a match.
Yeah.
So there was no quarter given in training.
Right.
So when you tackled, you tackled for the ball.
Yeah.
And so the first couple of training sessions, I wasn't sure if that's what they do here
Yeah.
or whatever. So you're almost
Yeah.
waiting to see what's going on,
Yeah.
and yes, they tackle, but they don't.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
wouldn't want to damage one of those expensive players, would you?
No, you wouldn't know. You wouldn't want to be the one that has gone through any one of those players, because what reminds you also is you play with the likes of Brian Robson in under 21s, right? And I remember playing against Wales, one of my first games for the under 21s.
Yeah.
And we played on the Friday at the Vetch Field, it was. And Robert, he was just unbelievable. He was unbelievable. He was. And so at the end of that game, I remember he got called up straight away and went and joined the England team for the next day.
Right.
And you think, wow. And then, because you watched him obviously in training, whatever, and you get a bit of a feel of what you're doing. So yeah, the training sessions were literally, you had to sort of get the balance of how and what you go about it, because if you didn't, you get just knocked aside.
Yeah.
But if you went in too strong, then people would be like, say, careful, because got a game or whatever. Just be mindful. So just getting the balance at that age, because enthusiasm and a bit of naivety can get into a lot of trouble at that time.
Yeah, but you come back and you play for Luton. I play 500 odd games. Watford, Luton, Watford, 500 odd games.
I didn't actually hear the word. You went,
so I didn't understand good job too. Good job too. I had one of those brain. What's his name? So you played 500 times for Watford. When it came to leave, how did that happen? And why?
Well, the Milan thing came at that end of that first season in the first division, after we'd come up, and we pretty much set the first division at that time alive, because people wondered, can this team that has come up from all the other divisions and whatever they've done, can they make it at the top flight? And we always believed we could, because that team knew what it was about. It knew what it could do if it played to its strengths. And so we never feared anybody in that time. We never feared anybody. So we just got out and got on with it. And having finished second to Liverpool and scored all the goals that I did, because I scored 33 goals that season, 27 league goals I scored that year. And the offer came at the end of a tour. I think we went to Malaysia and Australia and all of that. And when we got back, and just going to get our cars at the ground, it was. And I remember Graham saying to me, I just want to have a word with you. And I went into his office with him. And he said to me, we've had an inquiry about you from a team on the continent, because always a continent, not from Europe. It was like, we're from a team from the continent. And, but I've told them they have to double their offer if they want to talk to you. So I'm going like, okay, fine. No thoughts about leaving or anything. Looking forward now, summer, rest, then come back ready for pre-season for the following season. And the following week, I'm at home, phone ring, pop over and see me. So I, from King's Langley, I drive over to Graham, went up to he had made an office up in the loft of his house. And I sat down and he said to me, remember that club from the continent? I said, we're interested. I said, well, they've doubled their offer. And he said, so do you want to talk to them? And I'm all this time going through my head, I'm thinking, who are they? Because he hasn't said yet.
Yeah.
Thinking, who are they? So I said, who are they? And he goes, it's AC Milan. And I'm like, AC Milan, because when you talk about clubs in Europe, it was Real Madrid, Barcelona, bit of, or it would be AC Milan at that time. AC or that there it was. No other clubs existed. Bayern Munich and people like that, but those were the sort of glamour clubs as such. And so we spoke, and then and I went, and he said, well, if you don't want to talk to them and you don't want to go, tell me now, I'll call them. Done. And I said, the least I can do is being at them, talk to them, so I know, so I can find out a little about what's going on. And that's where it all started from that. from
Brilliant.
that one, and yeah,
Did you
it was
enjoy
very
your
strange.
playing it for
I
Man?
enjoyed the experience of what playing in Italy was about,
Yeah,
with the fans and how intense and the pressure that they put on you. But people talk about that you get pressure for whatever club you're at.
yeah,
It's a big game for you, whatever club you're at. And I think even bigger when you're at the smaller clubs because you're generally playing for your career
yeah,
at the smaller clubs. You know, players that are further up are generally more secure in their position and whatever because of where they're playing and what they've achieved. So when you play lower down, I think sometimes because every game you play, it matters.
yeah.
That's your mortgage, that's this and the other, everything. That's very important. So yeah, I just it was a case of you know whistle goes, go and
Good.
give your best, do everything you can,
Yeah,
and
brilliant.
it didn't matter what the shirt was that you're wearing on your back. It didn't matter
Mm.
again because everything we did at Watford was about give up your best every time, level of performance, bang, 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 every time. That's what it's going to be. So don't have to second guess it at all when you're walking out on the pitch. You knew your job, knew your role. Go out and do it to the best of your
Yeah,
ability. Some days some days it pays off. Some days it doesn't quite. And that's how it was. And what I found with the Italy experience playing over there was you realize that you do need other people to understand what you're doing
right.
and how you do it, and you them to make the thing really work. So because at Watford, it wasn't even the case that took it for granted. You just knew because of where you trained and everything you did, what everybody was
Familiarity.
doing.
Yeah,
Because it was just like eating and drinking and breathing. You just did it.
yeah,
When I went there, and because of the way they wanted to play and the pre-season, I think I scored 9 goals in pre-season in 5 games. I scored 9 goals in 5 games. So looking forward to the first game this season. First game kicks off. I don't see the ball for like 10 minutes. Just going backwards and sideways, backwards and sideways. I'm thinking, what is this?
yeah,
That's not how we did in pre-season because very used to pre-season sets out how
yeah,
you're going to play as you
yeah,
move forward. But that's not how it was. They played to more get on with the game and whatever.
yeah.
But the moment the season started, it was a case of we've got a point, keep the point as we are. And it was I found it boring.
Really.
And I didn't enjoy it. And people think, I see it says it was an amazing experience playing for AC Milan. And it's amazing. And I still can't believe that I actually was able to do that at that time in my life.
Yeah,
But I have to enjoy playing my football.
yeah,
And so when the opportunity came, and it's a case of that I could leave because he only allowed 2 foreign players, and they were changing both foreign players at the time.
yeah,
I think Torino or Roma, showed an interest and whatever. But once I found out that, I could go back to Watford.
yeah,
There was Manchester United as well, which is obviously a club I support. The opportunity was there and then, but and I just wanted. I suppose people can say it's the easy way, but in a way, it's not because you're going back and people have an expectation of what you are
yeah,
and what you were, and you've got to get back to that
yeah,
and then exceed it again if you're going to when you go back. So people can think it's easy, but it's not easy.
yeah,
Sometimes it's tougher because they remember you almost far better than what
yeah, yeah,
it actually the reality of it was.
yeah,
So yeah, but I chose to go back to Watford because I knew that I knew the way they played and I knew most of the players, although there'd been some changes, and I knew the manager and what it was all about, and I could
yeah,
just focus on what I had to do and do it to the best of my ability to help the team, help the others, and whatever. And
yeah,
and so yeah, I chose to go back to Watford because I wanted to enjoy my football again, and I suppose I didn't want to have another year where you played your football and it was just
yeah,
and that level of enjoyment wasn't there. But learned awful lot about myself and about football
yeah,
and your preparation and mental, physical, the way you eat and look after yourself to actually do the game. Learned immense, although Graham was very good at that, to learn that from, the Continentals as such. It
yeah,
was, again,
yeah,
it was just very good. And that helped me through
yeah,
my football career as well as
yeah.
through my life.
Yeah, and always hovering over the back of any sportsman's mind is that it's got to end sometime. You
Yes.
you
Yeah.
can't stop. So how did the end come for you, and how did you come to terms with it in terms
The
of
end. I
playing?
mean, I was 17 when I did my first my prelim coaching qualification. Did at 17,
Yeah,
and so I thought, get that done and
yeah,
get your qualifications so that you're in a position through if injury or whatever, you
yeah.
could stay in the game and do something along the lines. So that's what I did, and that's what I always wanted to do, because you, having worked for somebody like Graham Taylor and the way he worked and the success that he had, you think I would love to be able to replicate just a little bit of that somewhere and pass on my experience and things that I know and have learned to another group of players somewhere. So yeah, that was the plan.
So what
And
do you say
from
to the young Luther Blissets that come in now? What
I
would your
just
key part of advice be for them?
my key thing always is listen to what people tell you. Listen to what the senior pros go, because even the senior pros that um you know even the ones in the position that you're looking to take,
Yeah,
they will still give you little pearls of wisdom that you need to do. And it's a case of, it's always work hard and know what you're good at.
mm,
The game is about doing what you're good at, because that is why you've been picked in a team, to do the things that you are good at,
mm.
not what Barnsley's good at, because I can't do what Barnsley does. Barnsley can't do a lot of what I can do,
Yeah,
and in midfield and whatever, whether it be Kenny Jackett or whatever, I can't do the things that they do it to the level that they can do it, but I can do it, but I can't do it to the level that they do it.
yeah,
Where they are. So you learn, first and foremost for me, was know your own game. I mean, know your own game, learn the game of the other people around you, because then if you know, and I still say to people now, if you know what your teammates are going to do in 99% of any given situation they're in,
yeah,
surely that gives you a head start over the opposition, because there's no thought involved, because
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and that is quicker than having to think it and then do it.
yeah,
And so that's one of the things I learned. And that was people like Sam Ellis, Dennis Booth, and people like that. They're the ones that would tell you these little things. And Tom Wally, little things about being a striker. He says, your first run, first movement, do it for the defender, make the defender, and then you go where you want to go. Take him to where you want to go, and watch your centre halves and defenders where they go when they're defending. Because if they're going in those positions, they know that is danger. So if they know it's danger, that's where you should be.
yeah.
You should be in and around those areas as well. All these things that these things stick in your mind, and you try to impart that on some younger players as things goes along. And always never turn down an opportunity to shoot, unless one of your teammates in a better position when all they've got to do is roll the ball across the line. And that's what the Watford team was very good at. And I think, and you see some very selfish players now, even some, you see them on the TV all the time, and you think, just pass it, give it to him, he'll put it in the empty net, and they shoot, and then they'll go that at the end. And you think to yourself, if they did that, and when we were playing, you'd have ripped their heads off about it, because it's like the ball, if you're not going to put it in the back of the net, something that I know that I would have done, or my teammate would have done, that's where the ball should go.
Yeah.
It's recognizing when you go selfish and when you got to go, the team needs this more than me trying to do this. And that's how it should always be. Never anything at the expense of your teammates and your team.
Great philosophy about sport, but also about life.
About life. Yes.
And in life, you've carried on achieving the freedom of the borough of Watford, the deputy lieutenant of the county, and so on. How much does that give you back?
I think it gives me a lot. And I think one of the things that really, if anything, brought it home to me was when I received my OBE last year from brains gone from Prince William.
Yeah.
And it's when they actually tell you what you've been awarded it for.
Yeah.
That's when it's sort of think, wow, little old me being given this by the future king for things that I would just do normally.
Yeah.
I've not gone, I'm going to do this because I want to win an OB or whatever. It wasn't like that at all. It was a case of, and again, Graham Taylor was giving something back. Give something back, always what it's about. So we used to work every week there was not a week go by in playing year that one, two, three or more of the players were at a school, at a working men's club. I know people was home at a hospital or whatever, within the community doing something. And that has just continued, which is why I started, the former players club, to continue that more officially in a better way. So that, again, Graham Taylor brought that on board because it was always about family and community. And that's what we tried to do. And so it was just normal things to do. And if you're in a position where you can help somebody, assist somebody, help open the door for somebody, then you do it.
Yeah, all power to you, and what a great philosophy. Like me and like you, we're both patrons of Sporting Memories, which is another way in which we can help people with the sport we've done to remember and to keep the spark alive.
And it does work. It's quite incredible. I mean, do things when they used to do Golden Memories here and with other people that I go in and help out, and because again, why would I reinvent the wheel? The whole idea with the former players club is we will support our communities and whatever in any way we can. So we work with Ukraine, we work with veterans, we work with people with dementia and all those sort of cognitive issues. We work with young people, you name it. We will help to facilitate and wherever we can. But we're not going to go, we're going to start a group doing this when there's already groups doing that. If we can help them to do what they're doing even better and enhance what they're doing again, then that's what we do. So we partner with people and do that. And you talk people and you see this spark, this fire comes back in their eyes suddenly when that memory of something that they've done or they've been involved with, they've seen, or what something really special to them, and they start talking about it. And you think to yourself, this person can hardly speak or whatever, and now listen to them. And it's so powerful. And that is the reason why you want to go out and you do this as much as possible, because for that 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever, those people in that conversation, that is that person that their families and everybody knew at a period of time. And that is very special.
Absolutely brilliant, Luther. I've just seen a message flash up on saying it's past 1 o'clock.
Is it?
I stopped. No, I haven't quite said that. But another message flashed up and said how inspiring it was to hear from you and to share this last hour with you. And it certainly was for me. And I'd just like, on behalf of Goldster and Sporting Memories, to say, Luther, thanks so much indeed for sharing this last hour with us. Thank you.
It's been my absolute pleasure. Thank you.